Slavery and the Eight Veils by Don Harkins, from the December 2001 Idaho Observer. Over the last several years, I have evolved and discarded several theories in an attempt to explain why it is that most people cannot see truth, even when it smacks them in the face. Those of us who can see the conspiracy have participated in countless conversations amongst ourselves that address the frustration of most people's inability to comprehend the extremely well-documented arguments which we use to describe the process of our collective enslavement and exploitation. The most common explanation to be arrived at is that most people just don't want to see what is really going on. Extremely evil men and women who make up the world's power elite have cleverly cultivated a virtual pasture so grass-green that few people seldom, if ever, bother to look up from where they are grazing long enough to notice the brightly colored tags stapled to their ears. The same people who cannot see their enslavement for the pasture grass have a tendency to view as insane conspiracy theorists those of us who can see past the farm and into the parlor of his feudal lordship's castle. Finally, I understand why. It's not that those who don't see that their freedom is vanishing under the leadership of the power elite don't want to see it. They simply can't see what's happening to them because of the unpierced veils that block their view. All human endeavors are a filtration process. Sports is one of the best examples. We play specific sports until we get kicked off the playground. The pro athletes we pay big bucks to watch just never got kicked off the playground. Where millions of kids play Little League each spring, they're filtered out until there are about 50 guys who go to the World Series in October. Behind the first veil. There are over 6 billion people on the planet. Most of them live and die without having seriously contemplated anything other than what it takes to keep their lives together. 90% of all humanity will live and die without having pierced the first veil. The first veil. 10% of us will pierce the first veil and find the world of politics. We will vote, be active, and have an opinion. Our opinions are shaped by the physical world around us. We have a tendency to accept that government officials, network media personalities, and other experts are the voices of authority. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the second veil. The second veil. 10% of us will pierce the second veil to explore the world of history, the relationship between man and government, and the meaning of self-government through constitutional and common law. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the third veil. The third veil. 10% of us will pierce the third veil to find that the resources of the world, including people, are controlled by extremely wealthy and powerful families whose incorporated old-world assets have, with modern extortion strategies, become the foundation upon which the world's economy is currently indebted. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the fourth veil. The fourth veil. 10% of us will pierce the fourth veil to discover the Illuminati, Freemasonry, and other secret societies. These societies use symbols to perform ceremonies that perpetuate the generational transfers of arcane knowledge that is used to keep ordinary people in political, economic, and spiritual bondage to the oldest bloodlines on Earth. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the fifth veil. The fifth veil. 10% of us will pierce the fifth veil to learn that secret societies are so far advanced technologically that time travel and interstellar communications have no boundaries, and that controlling the actions of people is what their members do so offhandedly as we tell our children when they must go to bed. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the sixth veil. The sixth veil. 10% of us will pierce the sixth veil, where the dragons and lizards and aliens we thought were the fictional monsters of childhood literature are real, and are the controlling forces behind the secret societies. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without piercing the seventh veil. The seventh veil. I do not know what is behind the seventh veil. I think it's where your soul is evolved to the point where you can exist on earth and be the man Gandhi was, or the woman Peace Pilgrim was, people so enlightened that they brighten the world around them, no matter what. The eighth veil. Piercing the eighth veil probably reveals God, and the pure energy that is the life force in all living things, which are, I think, one in the same. If my math is accurate, there are only about 60,000 people on the planet who have pierced the sixth veil. The irony here is too incredible. Those who are stuck behind veils 1 through 5 have little choice but to view those people who have pierced the veils beyond them as insane. With each veil pierced exponentially, shrinking numbers of increasingly enlightened people are deemed insane by exponentially increasing masses of decreasingly enlightened people. Adding to the irony, the harder a sixth or better veiler tries to explain what he is able to see to those who can't, the more insane he appears to them. Our enemy, the state. Behind the first 2 veils we find the great majority of people on the planet. They are tools of the state. Second veilers are the gullible voters whose ignorance justify the actions of politicians who sent first veilers off to die in foreign lands as cannon fodder. Their combined stations in life are to be believed that the self-serving machinations of the power elite are matters of national security worth dying for. Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth veilers are of increasing liability to the state because of their decreasing ability to be used as tools to consolidate power and wealth of the many into the hands of the power elite. It is common for these people to sacrifice more of their relationships with friends and family, their professional careers, and personal freedoms with each veil they pierce. Albert J. Nock, 1870 to 1945, author of Our Enemy, the State, 1935, explained what happens to those who find the seventh and eighth veils. What was the best the state could find to do with the actual Socrates and the actual Jesus when it had them? Merely to poison one and crucify the other, for no reason but that they were too intolerably embarrassing to be allowed to live any longer. Conclusions. And so now we know that it's not that our countrymen are so committed to their lives that they don't want to see the mechanisms of their enslavement and exploitation. They simply can't see it, as surely as I cannot see what's on the other side of a closed curtain. The purpose of this essay is threefold: to help the handful of people in the latter veils to understand why the masses have little choice but to interpret their clarity as insanity; to help people behind the first two veils understand that living, breathing, and thinking are just the beginning, and show people that the greatest adventure of our life is behind the next veil, because that's just one less veil between ourselves and God. Slavery and the Eight Veils was written by Don Harkins, narrated and produced by Gareth Davies. Don Harkins was the editor, writer, and publisher of the Idaho Observer, a website that was a printed newspaper that ran for over 10 years. Don Harkins died in September 2009 at the age of 46. Here's what his widow, Ingrid Cassell Harkins, said on her blog in regard to her husband's untimely death. Do I believe there was foul play in Don's sudden diagnosis and death? Actually, I do. Mycoplasma infections, also used as biological weaponry, are associated with this particular type of leukemia. AML is also known to be resistant to chemotherapy. I believe it was a miracle that Don got out of hospital alive. The power of hundreds of people praying for Don, energetic machines focused on him, and the strength of our love brought him back to us. Don wanted to live. He had the strongest spirit of any man I have ever known. Several people have detected that Don was under energetic attack, and others picked up on Don being exposed to high levels of radiation, despite our remote location and lack of cell phones or nearby cell towers. He simply was not on death's door on Friday, weak but recovering. His body had purged a lot of the chemo and toxins on September 17th. And his color had improved by Friday afternoon. Yes, the technology is there for focusing a radiation beam on anyone who is effective in halting the plans of those who seek to rule the planet.